And good afternoon and welcome once again here to La Tertulia Ecuestre. We're continuing enjoying this show, and today's going to be super interesting, and we're going to have so much fun, and we're going to learn a lot, which is one of the ideas of these shows. So first, let's introduce Leopoldo Palacios. I believe you're back in Wellington, Leo. Hopefully everything is good. We have Santiago, who is back with us after a 1-week break. So Santi, good to see you again. And Carolo López Quesada from Caballerio.com. Carolo, good to see you and thank you for all the support. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of Montemedio for all the logistics and giving us the support, because today we have a very, very special guest, Laura Kraut from the US, that she is now in Montemedio, Spain. So Laura, I want to thank you. I know you are very busy at this time. You have a lot of horses, and taking some of the time to join us, it's really impressive. So thank you very much, Laura, for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Laura, everyone knows you, but I have to go a little bit about your resume. I mean, you're a world-class champion. I mean, you have gold medals in the Olympics, gold medals in World Equestrian Games. I mean, simply amazing. You have had some of the best horses in the world. Cedric, Miss Independent. I mean, I can count over and over about all your horses. But I want to ask you a very simple question. And I read some interviews, and I know you because we're neighbors. And Mary Elizabeth, she's been with you for over 30 years. She's like your backbone of the operation. And can you give us and take us through the last years, starting when you worked in Atlanta with only 5 years old, and how you moved up to where you are now? I mean, I know it's going to be a long story, but make it brief and take us, because I know you were a catch rider. You rode 62 horses in one day. So all those stories, bring us back to those dates.
Okay, I'll make it as quick as I can. Well, I grew up with my sister, Mary Elizabeth. Obviously, we were both in love with horses due to my mother's obsession with them. And yeah, I mean, we were very fortunate that when I think I turned 12 years old, some local people in Atlanta had seen me ride a pony, and they called my mother and asked if I would be willing to ride their ponies. As it turned out, they had some really good ponies. They ended up sponsoring myself and my sister through our junior careers till we were 18. And then at the end of that, we moved to South Carolina. My parents had moved to Camden, and so my sister and I went with. My sister was actually at that stage still a junior rider, and she got a job riding for a show stable there, Judy and Roger Young, and I actually was the groom. And so we sort of had the role reversal then. She never really enjoyed the competition, and I never really enjoyed the behind the scenes. So eventually we flipped it back around, and I started to work for myself at about age 20. And then I worked for a man named Rodney Bross for a few years as a professional rider. And then it just went from there. I met my ex-husband, Bob Kraut. I moved to Wisconsin, started my business there. At that stage, I couldn't afford to pay my sister, so she was working for Donald Cheska. And then after I developed my business a bit and got going a little, I was then able to afford to have her come in, and because she's basically essential to my business, to my operation. But yeah, I mainly rode hunters. I sat on my first jumper was I was 19, and he was a quarter horse, and he never had a fence down. He was great. Even Leopoldo, he wouldn't have knocked anything down with you. He was amazing. And I loved riding the jumpers, but the money for me was in the hunters. So I did that pretty much until 1992, or 91, I should say. And And then I had the good fortune of meeting up with Jeff Sutton, who owned a thoroughbred named Simba Run. And he was competing him in the Germantown Horse Show in Tennessee. It was very, very hot the day of the Grand Prix, and he came and he asked me, this was back when you could do these things. He asked, he said, it's really too hot for me to ride today. Would you ride my horse in the Grand Prix? And of course, at that time, I would ride anything and anything. So I said, yeah, of course, I'll ride him. I think I had 2 down, so I wasn't, miraculous. It wasn't a super day, but he was happy with the partnership, and so he sent the horse with me. That was late summer of 91. 92 was the year of Barcelona. He thought I should jump in the Olympic trials with the horse, and I, of course, thought that was fine. I had no idea. I'd never ridden on a Nations Cup team. I'd never even left the United States. I didn't have a passport. I went through the Olympic trials, and funny enough, I think there was 10 trials that year. I was on the team in the last round. I had the last fence down. If I hadn't had that, I would have actually been in the 4. Luckily for our country, I ended up 5th. So I got to go to Barcelona on the team, but I was the reserve rider. So I went to Chicago, got a passport, and then went to the Olympics. Anyways, once I was there and I saw the real sort of show jumping as it was worldwide, I was definitely bitten by the bug and thought, okay, my goal now is to see how I can get back to doing that versus doing the hunters. And it took me, probably eight more years until I could return. Realistically, I came back in 2000 with the mare Liberty, and then my new horse at the time, Anthem. And I did Le Bol and Rome with Katie Prudent. And a little bit the same situation. She asked me what my plan was that year with Liberty, and I said, well, I had just had Bobby, my son, and I said, well, I think I was just going to do the Olympic trials for the experience for the horse and myself. And she said, well, I think you can make this team. Anyhow, again, I did those trials, and I ended up winning the trials in the East, and then we went West, and I ended up making the team for Sydney. Which again then really sort of solidified that I wanted to then sort of gear my profession towards the jumpers and do less of the hunters. And so that's sort of how it's gone for me. I mean, since 2000, I've been able to grow a stable with young horses and students. I did a lot of training. And I've just been very, very fortunate to have wonderful owners, wonderful horses, and great help along the way from Emil Hendricks, who found Liberty and Anthem and Cedric, to Nick Skelton, who over the last 15 years has helped me progress in my riding and competing, and just all the people that are surrounding me, my sister, very much so. And that's it. I haven't ridden in, I don't even know how long now, probably 15 years. And I still like the sport. I'd still probably get on and ride a good one right now, but I'm going to stick with what I'm doing for a while. Was that quick enough?
Well, Laura,
quicker.
that was perfect. That was perfect. I mean, I didn't have goosebumps. I might have all the opportunities, and you were there, and you stepped up to the challenge. So that's amazing. Which that brings me to the next question. Do you think it's harder now for young and upcoming riders to have that opportunity to become a high-end professional that it was before, or it's just different? Because it all ends in hard work and passion. But going a little bit more than that, it's harder or not?
I definitely believe that it's harder. I think that for lots of reasons, but I think one of the main reasons, like for example, when I was starting, you could do the hunters and you could ride at the shows and ride the jumper easily. You could do both. And back then there were no FEI shows. It was all national. So, if I was in Cincinnati, they would have the $100,000 Grand Prix. There was no qualifier. Everyone was qualified. You could, there was many times when that horse, Simba Run, he really was best his first time in the ring. I wouldn't jump in any class but the Grand Prix. So you could show anywhere you wanted to show. You could ride. I could earn a living with the hunters. I feel like now, for example, you go to Wellington. I mean, it's very expensive. It's very difficult to qualify for the Grand Prix. Say if you want to ride in the 5-star, I mean, it's very, very expensive. And I feel like it's just, I would definitely struggle today. Like I think if I had to do it again right now, it would be not as easy. I mean, I guess for the ones that are truly, truly just so talented, people see them and they pick them up and sort of nurse them along. But for like myself, who wasn't really nursed along, but I had to kind of scrape and scramble to get rides, I think it would be difficult now.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I agree with you. But Leopoldo, I think he's in mute. You're in mute, Leo. Leo, you're in mute.
Leo,
Laura, in the sport
There we go.
today, all the people thinking hunter is very easy. In my opinion, hunter is very difficult. And you did both. You can explain a little bit, not very long too, but it's another long question, but what is the main difference between hunters and jumpers? But the people don't understand this. The jumper world always thinking hunter is a small fences go around and that's it. And I thinking is very, very difficult. You can explain that a little bit.
I'll give it a try. I would agree with you that the hunters, at least for me, I felt were much more difficult than the jumpers. To ride a hunter well, you have to appear as if you're doing nothing. So you have to, when you walk in the ring, first of all, they have to be perfect. And if they're trying not to be perfect, you somehow have to convey to them that they are being perfect. And you have to have such feeling, and you have to be able to see your distance or your stride far enough away that you can make minor adjustments without them noticing that you're making them. So, and so much of it is on the style of the horse. So I believe that it takes a lot of feeling as a rider to bring out the best style in a hunter. I think there's a lot of riders who can find their distances to the jump, but then they don't sort of enhance the style of the horse. The great hunter riders that you see today, that they do that and you don't even see them doing it. So I think the biggest difference for me is just there's so much, with the jumpers, you can react. If you need to give them a pull, you can pull. If you need to give them a kick, you can kick. A little bit of the same, you have to be able to bring out the best jump in them, because it's the same with the jumpers. You can get them to the right distance, but if they aren't balanced, you have a chance to knock it down. But I do think at least you don't have to sit so quiet, and you can be more obvious with your corrections. I rode hunters at the Devon Horse Show years ago for the Lindners and Tom Wright. And I was riding one of the best hunters of all time named Ashford Castle. And there was so much pressure. And I remember I was at the gate getting ready to go in for the last class. And I thought I would be less nervous at the Olympic Games on a pony than I would be riding into this hunter class right now. Because, you can control a lot, but you can't control all of it. And it's difficult. It's a stressful sport to be in. So I'm sticking with what I'm doing.
Laura, one of your greatest horses of all time, it's Simba Run, as you told us. Thoroughbred. I think that the bull line, Do you think we will see another thoroughbred in the high level today?
I really wish that we would, but I kind of think that it would be a long shot because I just feel like, it's too easy today to buy horses that are actually bred to jump, European horses that have the now. I mean, the breeding is so precise now, and it's just such an easy thing to do to buy even a weanling that is, buy Emerald out of a quick star mare. It's just so much more of a certainty. And with the thoroughbreds, I mean, I the first time I ever rode anything but a thoroughbred, I think was in 1997. So I rode thoroughbreds for a long, long time. And we used to go, you'd go to the racetrack and you'd trot them in hand, see how they trotted, and we'd put out straw bales and just trot them and make them jump the straw bale and see if we just liked the way they did it. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's just, why would we do this now when we can go and buy, something like I said for probably not too much more money than if you had to buy a thoroughbred. I would love it. I actually bought one about 5 years ago. And I tried and I, she was a good jumper, but she mentally wasn't there. And I think that's the other thing now in racing. They've got so many small tracks that they'll just keep running them. They'll just keep dropping them down levels and running them until they're actually no longer sound. Where back in the day, we could, if they weren't good enough, you could go and get them before they actually ran them into the ground, so to say. So I don't know. I mean, I think it would take somebody who was really passionate about it. And I'm sure there's really good jumping thoroughbreds. Funny enough, Nick's sons both, one of them trains steeplechase thoroughbreds and the other one rides them. And I watch them train and I watch them and I think often, God, that one I think would jump, but yeah, they do that sport and that's it. But I'd love to see it, but I don't think it would be, I would be surprised if it made a comeback.
Laura, how do you believe that the new rule for the hind boots will affect the competition in 2021, for example? No, because after nobody knows, because later the progress on the rider side will be higher. But during the first time of during the first part of 2021, how do you believe that it will affect on the competition side?
Well, I actually, when we first heard about it, we all thought, oh, this is terrible. Because we've all had horses that the boots have really, really helped. But upon thinking of it and knowing that it's coming up, I think it's a good thing. In the end, I think it's going to make, I think it's going to help make the competition level because, for example, Anthem, without the hind boots, he was very ordinary. And when you put the hind boots on him, it made him, it slowed his jump down and it just made him a better horse. I think now that everyone is going to sort of be on the same level playing field, I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think you course designers will probably be the ones that we'll have to talk, we'll speak to because I think it'll change things up a bit. I think that, maybe the courses won't need to be as careful as they are right now. I mean, you see jump offs now, and particularly in the jump offs, I think we'll really see a difference. I mean, I think, when you can ride and maybe not such a fast first round, Leopoldo, if you have a little bit more time in the first round, I think, you can help with it. But then when you get to the jump off, I think you're going to see a difference where, the back boots aren't going to kick in and they're going to have to we are going to have to ride maybe a bit more accurately and maybe a little bit slower, which isn't all bad, I think, because, I've been participating in some jump offs recently that just they're just so fast now. It's insane. I mean, really. So in the end, I think that the boot rule is probably going to end up being a good thing.
Laura, I want to go back to a story about the hill base and you jump the thoroughbred to see how they jump. And I want to bring now back to the European. For our audience, they are very interested in see what goes in your mind when you pick a young horse. I mean, when you're looking and searching for young horses, what are the two, three things that you really focus on that really makes a decision that you can bring this horse to a big level?
Okay. Let's see. I would say, I always look for a certain type. So for me, I actually always gravitate towards a more thoroughbred type of horse. I wouldn't say that I've ever really particularly leaned towards a heavy horse. So for me, the first thing would be the type. I like a lot of blood, and I like just sort of the fineness of a thoroughbred. And then for me, I guess it's the feeling when I try them. If I feel that the jump is easy, so I look for it to be effortless. And technique is important, but for me, like I say this all the time, I would much prefer to try a horse and not see a video than see a video and not try it. So I go more on the feeling of what it is. And sometimes, like I'll point out Cedric. The feeling he gave you, even when he was a young horse, when I jumped him, he was so light. He was like a deer. He'd fly, and he felt amazing. And then I would watch my videos, and his back end was not always very good. He would sort of cramp up behind or whatever. But you couldn't feel that because the feeling of the jump was so good. And I would watch the video and say, wow, it's not nearly as good as I think it is. But as it turns out, it was good enough. It worked. So I go with the feeling of the ease. Are they light? And then bravery. I don't mind a horse that's spooky, but I think that they have to want to. They want to have to go and help you, and particularly as I was saying, nowadays, there's so many good horses now and so many good riders that the days are gone that you can sort of take a horse that's got a lot of funny problems or quirks or that's spooky or doesn't like this or doesn't like that. You really can't keep up with. You're not going to win. Nowadays it's so top level. You need a horse that's got sort of the bravery and the intelligence to let you ride it and put it where you want it to be. So I guess that's 3. I also look at their eyes. I have to say, I go with their face. So it's the whole look of them. Is I can when I tried Kung Fu, I looked at him in the cross ties before I even got on him, and I'd already bought him. I just like the look of him. So
you felt a connection there.
yeah, definitely. So I don't know. I'm funny that way.
Leo.
Laura, today I see in the market of horses, I see when I go and the people buy horses and everything, I've been there and looking, and they looking too much about the careful of the horse. The horse need to be careful, 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 careful. And you say something that I think is very important. The horse need to be brave. I think one of the now with the change of no more back boots, I think the sport will change to need to have more brave horses and don't building so much careful as today. Do you think we go too far with the careful of defenses that you touch defense and defense go to the floor and don't have a little bit more heavy and more resistance. Today, you don't think it's too much, or we are okay?
Well, I mean, in today's world, you have to go so careful because with the, like I was saying before, first of all, there's so many brilliant riders now. I mean, it's just at any show you go to, the level of riding is so high. There's so many good horses with the back boots. Yeah, I mean, you can take sort of a good horse and make him really good. Most of the riders know how to train and be prepared for the show. So for you guys, I mean, if you don't make a course careful enough or you don't make the time log tight enough, I think you end up with 50% of the class clear, and nobody likes to see that. So I think it's, and the one place that I would say that doesn't happen is Calgary, because you still do use a little bit heavy material and bigger material. And I would say Calgary and Hickstead probably are the two shows where your bravery is almost as important as careful. And it works well. But you jump in these indoors, or you jump in small sand rings that all look alike. And the horses are programmed, and you set the 4.5 to the double of verticals. Everyone knows how to do that now, so everyone can train, everyone practices. You put the back boots on, the horse is rideable. We can make them add the 5, so we're slow enough to do the 1, or we can make them forward and 4, and we still have the technique. So I just think that you've sort of been pushed into that, because you can't build a meter. I mean, I know they made Calgary a meter 70, but I mean, meter 80, what are we going to have then? So I think you can only build it so big. So I think that it's probably a good thing to take the boots away, and then I think it'll take time, but it would be nice if if you could go back to a little bit more of a bravery test and a little bit less of everything being super careful. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be an interesting test, because I think, as I've said, and I keep saying, the level of riding and horses right now is just astounding. I mean, everywhere you go to a global champion show or you go to Aachen, and you see, it's just horse after horse. You never watch one and think, oh my God, that's awful. They're all sort of, good to great. So, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be nice if it wasn't just so super careful all the time, but we'll see what happens.
Laura, I heard that Cedric had an amazing history. Can you tell us about the beginning of the horse?
Well, yeah, actually, I was, yeah, this goes back to, I think it was 2004 or 5. I can't remember which year, but I was in Europe. I was actually heading to Le Bowl, and I was at Emil Hendrix's, and he wanted to go to Lumen to watch the Grand Prix on the Sunday. So he said, come on with me. So I drove there with him, and he immediately exited the car and went off with all of his friends, and I knew no one, so I just was standing and watching. And I happened to be watching the second ring, and this little gray came in, and I saw him jump the first 2 jumps. Again, I go by looks, because I just loved him at first sight. And he jumped around 120 course, and I was able to get his number. And I went and found Emil. I said, go find out about this horse. And funny enough, the rider on him at that time was, I don't even know how old he was. It was Michael van der Vleuten. But he was like 12 years old or something. Emil found out that Eric van der Vleuten had the horse. And so he galled on him, because ironically, Jan Tops had seen him as well and asked also. So I luckily got there first. I jumped the next morning. I tried him, and this actually is funny. I jumped no more than, I would say, definitely not more than 20 jumps, probably less than. And I walked over to Emil and I said, yeah, I'm having him. And Emil looked at me and he said, are you sure? Because I'm sure he was seeing the awkward style that the horse had and I wasn't feeling it. And I said, yeah, no, I'm definitely having him. So I bought him, or actually I had an owner at the time, Peter Wetherill. And we had just sold a horse to Gerke Schroeder, and so they wanted to buy another one. So Peter Wetherill and a client of mine at the time, Janice Aaron, bought him in partnership and shipped him to Calgary, where I was competing. He was 7 years old, and when he arrived, he was he was a pony. I didn't remember that he was only, that he felt big when I rode him, and he was tiny. So anyhow, the rest was kind of history. I rode him and kept him going, and then, well, there's a lot of story to it, but anyways, I was lucky enough that the original idea was to buy him and resell him, and because he was so difficult and so little, no one really wanted him. So I was able to keep him and keep going. But people always ask me, did I know he was going to jump Grand Prix and jump the Olympics? And I absolutely had no idea. Even as we were flying to Hong Kong, I had no idea that I was going to actually be able to pull this off. So George Morris actually had all the faith in the horse, much more than I had. But anyhow, I think probably one of the stories that you're looking for was because I had told Armando. His owner, Peter, ended up passing away not too long after Hong Kong. And the horse was left to his brother, Cordy. And Cordy kept him for a few years, and then he decided he wanted to sell him. And I think he was 14 at that time. And, I had always said that selling Cedric would be like selling my son. I loved that horse so much. But he wanted him sold, and that was how it was. And I was in Florida, and Jane Clark came to me and she said, she asked, is Cedric for sale? And I sunk. I said, well, yes, he is. And at the time, I think she had Molly Ash riding her horses, and she said, well, would he pass the vet? And I said, yeah, well, he's 14, but I think he will. He's sound. So she said, well, I'm going to send a vet to do just a small vetting, and then I'll let you know. So the vet came and looked at him. I wasn't even there because I couldn't stomach it, and the vet said, yeah, he looks fine. And so then she came to me a few days later and she said, well, I think, he's sold. And on Friday, when the money gets to your account, I would like you to come to my house, And so I said, okay. The whole thing was very strange, but, I was devastated. And Nick was there and he couldn't believe the whole thing. He's like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, how could this happen? And I was just gutted, but that was just the way it was. So on the Friday, the money hit the account, and my secretary called Jane, and she gave me her address, and so I went over, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have to tell her all about him, and explain to Molly how he is, and I walked in the house, and she said, so I've had you over here because I want you to meet Cedric's new owner. And I said, oh, it's not you. And she said, no. And this woman walked out, Margaret Dupre. And she said, Margaret was a wonderful friend of Peter Wetherill's from childhood. And she has dressage horses. And she said that she knew that Peter would never want the horse to leave me and to go, to be sold, particularly to another country. And so she bought him, not knowing me, but she bought him for me so that I could keep him. And I just burst into tears because I thought I had no idea. And not only did she buy him then for me, but then she gave me a quarter of him. And lucky enough, then she's given him to me. So he's in the backyard in England right now. So I get to, I'll have him for the rest of his life. So anyways, it was just a miracle of a story, because I really thought I would lose him for good. And she was like I don't know, she was an angel and came in and bought him for me. So that's Cedric's story.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's a great story, and really, I believe that the young people need to learn about your passions of the horses, no? And in terms of the youth people, what do you recommend? Because the other day we discussed that today we have, it's true that we have so many good riders on the top level, but we are seeing, or we discuss here, that we have, most likely, we have less horse people or less horsemen or horsewomen than pilots today, no? And when you pay attention on your words, and you see your passion and your enthusiasm on this sport and on these animals, what do you recommend to the youth people to grow on this sport in reality? No, to really to have a career is not just to compete; it's many things more. What do you recommend to them?
Yeah, it's difficult, because I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think that the way I grew up, and the way I think a lot of the people of sort of my generation, we grew up learning not just the riding. We took care of the horses. I broke, when I was 14, 15 years old, I broke young horses. I broke 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, and I did everything with the horses, as I know Katie Prudhomme did, and Leslie Howard, all of that group did. I think, unfortunately, now there's so many shows. I mean, me included, when it's not COVID, we go week after week after week to a new show, trying to stay up on the computer list so that we can still go to another show, so that we can then get qualified to go to another show. So, I mean, I think the hardest part now is really having the time at home to learn real horsemanship. I mean, I think these young riders, I think that's a lot of what they miss out on. I think that even at home in America, with the kids who do equitation and the jumpers, and they're going to school full time. They fly in on the weekend. The horses are prepared for them. They get on, they show, and then they leave. There's so much concern about the competition and very little about what goes into the competition. How to change that, I don't know. I mean, I even said that COVID may have been a big favor to our sport, because it actually forced people to stay home and do homework and actually work with the horses and get to know them. And I know for my students, it was a great time. I mean, we had 3 months where I could teach them basics, and they actually got to pay attention to their horses, and it just was a great thing. How we can implement that, how we can make that sort of happen all the time, I don't know. This has actually been a funny topic of conversation recently, because it would be very nice if we could scale it back where you didn't have to show so much, and you could teach people real horsemanship, and encourage getting other great horsemen in to teach also, because that was another thing. I mean, I used to, you would take clinics, you would learn from everybody, whether it was George Morris or back in the day, there was Dave Kelly, who you guys wouldn't know, but he was a famous hunter rider, and he was an amazing horseman. Just things like that. I think, unfortunately, that's sort of lost, and I don't really know, in our big business world of show jumping now, how to reintroduce that. I think the only way is that person, that kid that's coming along, has to have the desire to want to learn it. And then there are people out there who will teach it. But I think that unless they want that, it's going to be difficult.
That's true.
That was a beautiful story about Cedric. I mean, beautiful. Congratulations, very emotional. And so, congratulations of that gift of life. So that's good. You deserve it. Now, Laura, let's go a little bit into your knowledge and your experience. Grand Prix Day, you go and you walk the course. Please share us how do you walk a course, and depending on the questions that you see on the course, does that influences you of how to do the warm up? Like you change the plan, or you keep the plan for that specific course independently of the questions that you encounter in the when you course walk?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that. That's a really good question. I think as far as the warm up goes, I would tend to not change. Not much, anyhow. I would warm up the horse for what that horse would normally need. So I gear my warm up to what the horse does. You know, whether maybe that particular horse needs to jump wide or oxers or finish on a tall vertical or whatever that horse needs is what I normally would stick with. I mean, every now and then I would maybe, if the first fence is a big square oxer off the left lead, maybe I would do that as my last oxer just to prepare. But I really believe that actually the warm up is just the warm up. It's really just to get the horse loosened up, get yourself organized, and go in and execute. How do I walk the course? Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just, I walk it probably in an old fashioned way because I was taught, that basically if it's a line, I get to the backside of the end of the line, and I don't take two steps like people do. I always sort of look at the jump, and I look where I feel I'm going to land. And I don't know why, but that's just the way I've always done it. So normally it's pretty close to the two steps, but I feel like sometimes, like if you're coming from a long gallop, and I think you could land further than two steps out. So I sort of, in my mind, think about that and think, or if I'm coming off a very short turn, my horse may land closer than that. So I would take it into account. And then I do four big steps because I'm not that tall for every stride. And I mean, that's how I walk the lines that way, and the combinations I do, I do it in feet, which confuses everyone over here because everything is in meters. So I do the, 24 feet for the one stride and, whatever. But I guess my strategy is, it's always horse specific. So if it's for myself or if it's for a student, I'm mainly thinking about the horse. So, if a line walks a certain way, say it's a forward line to a vertical, and I'm riding a horse that actually maybe needs some support at the vertical, I might think, okay, maybe I should add a stride here to help the horse balance for the vertical. Or if the time allowed is really, really tight, Leopoldo, I might gallop into the line and figure out a way that I can make the stride that has to be left out such that I'm balancing at the end and helping the horse a little bit more. So for me, walking the course is mainly thinking about how it's good for the horse and what traps there are for the horse and what I'm going to have to help the horse with. Is he going to spook at the water? Is he going to look at the planks or what? It's just knowing your horse really well, and that's kind of how I've always done it. And with my students, the same. I know their style of riding. I know their horse very well normally. normally I'll have ridden their horse enough that I actually know exactly what to do. And so I give them, my plan as if I was riding the horse. So I guess at the end, it's really, I can walk it generally and say, okay, this is a forward 5, this is a steady 7, this is a whatever. But when I take into account the horse that I'm riding, it becomes a lot more complicated, probably.
Well, you know what? I have a story, a personal story, that I walked a course with Santi once, and it was the final of the World Cup in Omaha. And he told me one of the biggest mistakes that the riders do is they only go and see the jump and the distance, but they don't see the surroundings. And those surroundings are actually what distract the horse or is additional questions for the combination. So, and I remember Santi, we walked and we went to all see all the details that he already worked through, that the writers not telling all of them, or maybe they saw them. I don't know. I never asked them, but they were just focusing on that. And you're right. You have to see what else is there. If it's a spooky horse, what he's going to see. What about the build of the jumps, the material, the colors? So yeah, so I think that's very important.
It definitely is.
Leo.
Laura, I think in the change of the sport of today, one of the main things is the number of international shows. And we lose a lot of national shows. You don't think after this COVID and all of this, we need to come back to have more national shows, but in the low levels, 2 stars and these kind of shows, that having points 45 classes for the list is better. You don't think it's better to have more national shows and will be better for the rider, better for the horses, and better for learning about riding for the new generations that don't go to international show to another international show, can be 5 star or 2 star or 1 star, whatever. You don't think is too much? What is your opinion about?
Well, I definitely think that the way the sport is now. So if you want to get to a level in the sport, you've got to get to a level in the ranking list. And basically, I think the whole sport now is about the world ranking list, which is a bit disappointing, in my opinion. I mean, I think that it didn't used to always be that way. I think that it was, yes, ranking was part of it, but also credentials were a part of it. If you were Ludger Beerbaum or whatever, you got an invitation to the show. It's just things have changed a lot, and now it's all about being high up on the ranking list. And the only way to get up on the ranking list is to jump in FEI ranking shows. So whether it's 2 star, I mean, 2 star doesn't get you many points, but it's points, and that's unfortunately what everyone focuses on now. I don't. Which I never have, because I always have thought to myself, it's not going to make me try any harder. Whether it's, whatever star show it is, I'm going to try to win, or I'm going to try to develop my horse and do what's best for him. So I've never thought about it, but I think we all have fallen into the trap of competing at these shows more than we should be. And I love the idea of doing national shows. I think doing shows where you can develop the horse and you don't have to run the legs off of them to try to even be in the top 10. It would be better for the horses, and I think that they would last longer. I just am not quite sure how we would get to that, because then we do this. I do that, and then I drop down to 200 on the ranking list. Then for the next year and a half, I can't go to any of the shows that I've developed this horse to go to. In fact, I've met with a few riders, even Katarina Alfel, who's a wonderful rider. She now has developed 3 horses that are 9 years old that are actually ready to go and jump some really good shows, and she can't get in. So, now she says, now I either sell these horses or I just keep wasting them at 2-star shows. So it's a difficult thing now. I mean, I think actually Nick and I were talking about it, and he's so relieved he's retired because he said he wouldn't have been able to keep up with when he had only the 2 horses. So I think it's just going to be. I think the whole sport is going to start to change. Hopefully, I think with the changing of the boots, the horses aren't. You won't be able to call on them time in and time again. I think you'll get a couple of shows out of them, and then they're going to need to go home and rest and regroup and retrain and go back out again. So maybe it'll help with the ranking. Be so divvy in the top.
Laura, the USA team is the most feminist of all, I think. Often with 4 women on the team. When are you going to have a female chef d'équipe?
I don't know. I'll speak to Robert about that. No, I think. I mean, we do right now. Anne Krasinski is the junior chef to keep, for the young riders. And my guess, I wouldn't be surprised if in the future there'd be, I mean, Beezy is already talking about retiring in the near future, and I think Robert will retire eventually, and I think Beezy would be phenomenal. But she's so smart, and nobody would have more experience than her. So you would never know. I don't know that if she'd want the job, but I think she'd be good for it. And yeah, I don't know. It could happen.
Changing the issue and going to Rio 2016, what was your feeling?
Of the final? Is that what
Yeah,
sorry, I couldn't. Yeah, of what happened.
not the final.
My feeling was, yeah, that was, probably one of the greatest moments in sport that I've been involved with ever. Yeah, that was the longest day in history, I think, the day of the final, because I'm sure, as everyone knows, I mean, Nick had a very mediocre competition up until he made it. I think he was 30th. I think he was the last to qualify to go in the individual. So he strategically put himself in the place that he always loved, which was first to go. He always loved being first, or he was always first to go in the Nations Cups for the team, and he liked that early position, so that worked well for him that day. But I remember that morning I thought, oh my gosh, if this horse has a fence down, he's just gonna be devastated, because the whole years leading up to it was for that day. I mean, this was all he'd thought of, talked of, dreamt of, everything. So I remember when he was clear the first round, I just burst out crying, and I'm not a crier, but I was so relieved that I thought, okay, well, at least he's made the second round, and then he goes back to the second round, and then he's clear again, and the same thing. I mean, I was so emotional about it. Even Nick was like, "What is the matter with you? Why are you so emotional?" But I knew how important it was, and I know how easily things can go wrong. And when you say things go wrong, I mean, he could just touch a pole and it comes down, and that's the end of the Olympics. But to have the jump off, with 6 horses and him go first, and I knew he'd ridden a quick jump off, but when you have Eric Lamaze, Kent Farrington, Peter Fredrickson, can't remember who else it was, but coming after, I thought, oh, that wasn't. I mean, it was quick, but I didn't think it was so quick. So probably the funniest thing that happened that day was I can't remember. It was obviously it was probably the fourth horse in. He was still in the lead, and so I ran over and I said, "You've got the bronze," you know. And he looked at me and he said, "I don't want that rusty old thing." And I remember I said, "Typical of Nick." I'd have been thrilled with a bronze, but he wasn't having that. And then, you know, I mean, the rest was history. The fact that that he held on to win and just was, I think also on that day to see the reaction from the other riders. Ludger Beerbaum was so emotional. Just seeing people, just the respect and because I mean, when you're at that point and you know how difficult it is, and the fact that he was 59 years old and the horse had, you know, made a comeback from injury, and I think just the feeling of that everyone had for it, it just was, it was magical. I mean, it really was. It was one of the greatest days. I mean, it was fantastic. So I will never forget it.
Nobody forget that this date. Nobody will forget this day. At least
No.
the people that were there involved, I promise to you that they never will forget the reaction of the people and the reaction of everyone with the respect and whatever that it means. It was so important for the people. Was not for one, was for many people. This was this was the reality.
It was. Yeah, it was. I've never seen anything like it, and you know, it was. Yeah, we'll never forget it. So it was a great day.
It was great for sure, César.
And continue with the Olympic spirit. How are you preparing for Tokyo?
Well, slowly. You know, I actually, funny enough, getting back to this computer list, I really this time last year, I really had made my plan of how I was going to work forward to next year or this year. And so I made the conscious decision to not show too much with the horse that I thought, you know, I was going to aim towards Tokyo. And I went very slowly in Florida, only jumped a little bit, brought one of the ones that I had planned for Aachen and Rotterdam here to the Sunshine Tour, and didn't jump her a lot because I was saving up, you know, for April. Then I was going to really make my move and get going. And then I really dropped down the computer list. And funny enough, now I'm paying for that. But anyways, I'm going to just probably stick with the same idea. I think I've got a few horses. I unfortunately lost a really great horse, a 9-year-old stallion called Casco Bay last week here. He colicked and didn't make it past the surgery, and I really had very high hopes for him for next year, and it's been disappointing, but I'm fortunate enough that I do have a few others, and so I'm just gonna slowly move along and sort of get them prepared, because I think, you know, to peak now or even to peak in Florida or the beginning of Florida is a bad idea. I mean, I think also we need to make sure it's going to happen. I think they're saying it's March when they make the decision, so which is good. So I think, you know, at that point we know one way or the other. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep making sure they're healthy and sound, and the two that I have the experience. So I think they don't need to do a lot of showing in preparation. So I'm mainly working on developing my young ones now.
All right, super. Laura, it's been we're close to 1 hour, Leopoldo. So any last comments? Leopoldo, you go first, then Carolo, then Santi, and then we have to say goodbye. Okay, Leo? You're in mute.
Thank you for coming here. I getting old. I always forgot to put it on the microphone. Thank you for coming here. you all my life, I think you are a very good rider and a fighter for the sport. And I have a last question for you. The you have different teams of horses. How are you doing to working between shows to the horses that you don't show? The horses travel all together with you, or you leave horses at home and come back, and this is very difficult for all of the riders today that don't have the horses all together and need to only working 1 or 2 days before the show. How are you doing this?
I Yeah, I agree. It's not easy. I think well, over here in Europe, well, prior to COVID, I spend a lot of time on a plane. So I'm normally out of the show on a Sunday night. I will ride the horses that are going to the show Monday, Tuesday, and maybe Wednesday morning before they leave. They go to the show, I'll meet them there. I normally, because we're based in England, I'll normally send one group out, and that group will do, 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks. And then again, I go back to my sister. I'm so lucky I have her. So she, and then the good people that I have, and even Nick, when he will ride, they'll keep the horses that are at home working, and fit. And, when my horses are at home, I do a lot of riding out. We're lucky enough to have the gallops for the race horses down the road. So, they go on the gallops, we ride on the roads. They probably only do 2 or 3 days a week where they're in a ring. And then they would jump very little, if at all, except for when I'm there. So I'm kind of particular about that. Anyways, I also have a great rider with Julie Wells, and now Nick's nephew Charlie Jones. He's riding, and a really, really good rider. So I'm fortunate that I have them, particularly for the young horses. They'll keep them going and take them to some little shows locally. And it takes it takes a village. So I'm lucky I have a good village.
Laura, as we say in Spain, Laura, you are not Laura or Laura.
Laura.
It's a great honor to have you here with us. You're a queen of our sport, so we are very grateful with you. And you can help us. We want Nick here in our Tertulia Ecuestre. So if it's possible for you, try to say him, we want here in our Tertulia. Thank you very much.
I'll get it. I'll get it done. Don't worry. The main complication will be this computer situation.
Okay, Laura, thank you very much to come here, and it was really a pleasure to talk with you, and I hope that you enjoy, and also I hope that the people will have the half of the enthusiastic way to understand this sport that you have. Just the way that you see this sport is the way that everybody likes that the people see this sport. Thank you to come here with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed this, and I've watched you guys before, so I watched you with Margie. So this was really an honor. So thank you very much.
Well, Laura, thank you. Thank you for sharing all your emotional stories. They were amazing. So thank you. And I'm very, very, very proud of you being here, because you're not only a great writer, you're a great ambassador of the sport. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Carolo, López Quesada for Cavalarium.com, Ecuestre Digital, Mariela, y por todas sus traducciones que vamos a hacer aquí también, y sobre todo a Montemedio por todo el soporte y la ayuda que nos están dando para tener a Laura aquí. So thank you very much, everyone, and hope to see you soon. Thank you, Laura, and good luck with your horse shows.
Bye-bye. Thank you.